Hello everyone, and welcome back to the course. Over these next two sections, we're going to work through an entire data analysis project together. But this time, we'll be using Python and the various data analysis libraries that we've covered over our last 6 sections on Python. This is going to be a great chance to apply all of the skills that we've learned so far, as well as learn a couple of new things along the way too. In this section here, we'll start with a quick introduction to the project, as well as loading and cleaning the data. And then in the next one, we'll go through and actually analyze, explore, and visualize the data. So by the end of these 2 sections, you'll have got another complete portfolio project that you'll be able to use and show off to employers. And for this project, we'll actually use the same HR analytics dataset that we used in section 8 for our Excel data analyst example. And then we'll perform a very similar analysis to that, but this time by using Python and the libraries that we've covered. The reason that we're doing this is, firstly, we're already familiar with the dataset, which will make things much easier to get started. And also, it'll really help us to see how the skills and analysis that we learn in Excel can be carried over and carried out in Python. But we will go through an entirely separate project in section 18. So we will get a chance to see all of these skills, but then also applied to a different dataset as well. And with all that said, let's go ahead and get started. We'll just have a quick recap on the project. So mainly the data cleaning and analysis steps that we took in Excel. Like in Excel, the first thing that we'll need to do is clean our data. And for this dataset, the steps that we took before were to check for any duplicates or missing values, as well as checking for any typos or spelling mistakes. Then we went through and removed all of our redundant columns, renamed our employee salary and revenue columns, followed by adding in our age group and ROI columns. And then finally, we just went through and replaced all the numbers in our categorical columns, such as the education and job level columns, with descriptive labels instead. For the analysis goals and objectives, we'll be looking at the same kind of things that we did in Excel. So factors relating to the employee attrition, employee performance, employee revenue, as well as some information relating to the employee demographics. Now that we've been through and recapped on this, let's move on over into Jupyter Notebook and get started. Okay, so here I am in a new notebook file. I've gone ahead and put in the requirements for the data cleaning up here at the top, just so that we can reference what we need to do without having to go back to the PowerPoint slide. And like usual, I'll make sure to leave the solution notebook file for this section inside of the section folder. So if you want to reference any of the code, then you can find it there. But before we can carry out any of these data cleaning steps, we'll need to go through and import our libraries. For the data cleaning, we'll just be using NumPy and Pandas. So I'll go ahead and import these 2 libraries now. Okay, and then we'll actually need to import or load our dataset in. When we've used data frames before, we've always just gone through and generated random data using NumPy. But it's also possible and very common to import existing datasets too. And to do this, we can use the pd.read functions. If I type this in and press tab, it'll give us a list of all of the different options available. The most common options out of this list are CSV, Excel, HTML, JSON, SQL, and XML. But as you can see, there's a lot of different options for various different data types here. In this case, our raw data file is just a CSV. So I'll go ahead and type in read_CSV. Inside of our parentheses, we can just pass in the name of the file that you want to import, which in our case is HR Analytics Starter. So if I start typing this in and then press Tab, Jupyter will autocomplete the rest of the name for us. And I'll just assign the result of this to a variable which I'll call df. So now we've got a data frame called df, which contains the data from this CSV file. But for cases where your data is in a different directory though, you'll just need to pass in the full file path to wherever your data is located. And then finally, before we move on to the next lecture, where we'll actually clean this data, we'll just have a look at the head and a basic overview of our data frame, just to make sure that all of our data has imported correctly. So df.head, and then, yep, all of our data here looks fine. We've got all of the columns that we had before, and then the associated data just underneath in our rows. And if we check the info on this, then we'll get a list of all of the different columns, the non-null value count, and also, very importantly, at the end, we get the dtype or data type of the column too. Which, if we have a look here, as we go down the list, these all look to be correct. So Pandas has correctly identified all of our numeric columns for us, which is great. And then finally, if we call the scribe on our data frame, it'll just return a bunch of descriptive statistics about our numeric columns too. Okay, so let's leave this one here for now. We've been through and recapped all of the data cleaning and analysis goals of the project, as well as then importing our dataset into Python by using the pandas.read_CSV function. In the next lecture, we'll clean this data by going through all of these steps that we've got listed up at the top here, and then after that, we'll be ready to analyze and visualize it all in the next section. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you all there.